to say to an athlete, like, I know you really want to do this race, but it's just not in our best interest to do it, sort of thing. And so some of those conversations and practices, I guess, in a way make it easier for me to make hopefully smart decisions, you know, for myself as an athlete. First started coaching 2015. I sort of felt that I was in a sort of position, or I had a lot of sort of knowledge and experience from previous studies at university, and just sort of wanting to use that to help people along their journey, and that journey being something that I'm sort of also, you know, individually and personally really passionate about, the sport of trail and ultra running. There were definitely a few sort of coaches that had a big impact on me. The first one was actually who I ended up studying under and then working for a number of years, Andy Dubois from Australia. Andy was my coach at the time, and so just over the years working with him and chatting with him. Personally, I was probably the most annoying client ever, because I was always asking 1,000 questions about, you know, why are we doing this, or what's the reason behind that, or shouldn't we be doing more of this. From very early on, definitely helped shape a lot more of my understanding around coaching, and some of his coaching philosophies and the way he was delivering training programs. Definitely as a massive sort of part of who I am as Scotty the coach now, and what I'm doing. As I've said to a lot of the athletes that I coach over the years, it's not just a training plan. Like the writing of the training plan and the prescription of the training plan and intensities, that's kind of almost in a way the easy part. I feel like the good coaches that kind of stand out from some of the other coaches, or maybe coaches that are, you know, never kind of looking for work, or, you know, struggling for clients or athletes, whatever it might be. I feel like a lot of it is just, you know, connecting with athletes, you know, listening to athletes. Being a good coach, I think, at different times almost plays a different role depending on the situation or the timing, or depending on what's going on with another athlete. And definitely with my style of coaching, it is very sort of hands-on, a lot of involvement, a lot of communication, a lot of kind of debriefing, exercise and workouts and racing and all that kind of stuff. So personally as a coach, I've sort of always tried to go, I guess, above and beyond what maybe would be expected from athletes when they first start with me. And that's purely just because for me as a coach, it's always, what can I do to help, you know, Mary or Frank or James or Mark or whoever it might be. Like, what can I do to help them more? Like, occasionally got things wrong as a coach very early on in my career, and I feel most of that was kind of based around listening to clients too much. And it sounds kind of weird, but it would be like, sometimes it'd be like, oh, hey Scotty, like, you know, like, I want to do this, and I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, let's do that. And or hey Scotty, like, I want to, you know, do a longer run than what you had planned. And I think early on, when I was new to coaching and didn't have as much experience, and I feel like I probably turned into a bit of a yes man to a degree. It was like, yeah, you can do that, of course you can. Like, oh yeah, that'll be fun, that'll be great. And it was, I think, just coming from a position of, not wanting to sort of say no and be like, well, no, you can't do that. And maybe some of that was because of a fear of then getting a question back of like, well, why can't I do that? And then I'm needing to kind of try and explain myself as far as like, you know, we're doing X, Y, and Z at certain times for a certain reason. This is part of the bigger picture. And so I think I probably let athletes do a bit too much in the earlier stages of my career. Whereas now, like, if an athlete says like, hey, I want to, you know, do this, and if I think it's a stupid idea, I'll be like, hey, Frank, Bob, you know, Mary, whatever, like, that's a real dumb idea. Like, we are definitely not doing that, you know. And so I feel like I've definitely become kind of more, not necessarily assertive, but just I say how it is, you know, like, and if I think it's a stupid idea, then I'll say it's a stupid idea, or we could do that, or what about this, which would be a much better idea, you know. So just sort of trying to, you know, sort of push the athlete in the right direction and help them along. Naturally, I've definitely been shaped by every single coach that I've ever had, you know, over the last, you know, 10 or 15 years. And I've learned so much from every single one of them. It's definitely made me realize there's no one size fits all approach with coaching. Just the knowledge that I've gained over the years, and just the, you know, hundreds of different athletes that I've had contact with over the last, you know, 10 or 11 years now. And just being able to sort of, you know, zoom out a little bit and see, okay, who is the athlete? What are they planning on doing? What are the goals and objectives? And then kind of going into the tool bag and saying like, okay, like, how do we want to approach this? I think success for the athletes I coach, it just ranges so broadly. Like, I do have some athletes that are competing in races to try and win and to get on podiums and trying to secure sponsorships and things like that. And then I do have people that are doing their first ever trail running race or 50k or whatever it might be. It's just so interesting, you know, like some athletes is a case of like, hey, like the goal is to win a race or to get on a podium or to perform really well, and whereas some athletes I coach, it purely just is, hey, I just want to be able to finish the race and not get cut off by the time cut-offs during the race kind of thing. And so what's involved for, you know, athlete A and B or C and D or whatever it is, it's always kind of different, and I get so much enjoyment out of helping different people achieve different goals, and it gives me really good balance in my kind of personal life and my life as an athlete as well. I might be training 17 to maybe 20 hours per week, maybe a touch more at times, but that leaves a lot of kind of time outside of the running and the physios and the massages and body maintenance and all the stuff that I need to do as a professional athlete. And so yeah, it just gives me really good balance overall, and it has meant that over the years when I have had injuries or I've had time on the sidelines from my own personal running, I can kind of live vicariously through my athletes, and it's kind of like, you know, yes, it sucks that I'm not racing and I'd love to be running and racing, but I've got all of these athletes that they're still on their journey, and you know, they're building towards some big, crazy, amazing kind of races. And so for me to just sort of stay connected in the sport, and so yeah, kind of I guess selfishly coaching gives me something personally just through the process of being a coach and helping people as well. So I think probably the biggest piece of advice I would give, well, any new athlete or probably any athlete across the board, to be fair, is just progressions with choosing races, progressions with training as far as, you know, building into training after a layoff or building back into training after you've just had a race, and just realizing that, you know, it doesn't have to be this fast 100 miles an hour type process, or like, you know, as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I've done a 50k, like the next logical step up would be to do a 100k, because that's longer and tougher and crazier. And the athletes that I've found over the years that have had kind of the most success are the ones that are, you know, they are patient with things. They are realizing that like an ultra marathon, like this is a long journey, and we've got time to, you know, build into longer stuff. We're running because we love running, and I think it's important for athletes not to lose like sight and the reasons why they got into running in the first place, and making sure that, you know, some poor decision making or planning as far as planning out a race calendar or season, making sure that we're not going to be making mistakes with planning or picking races that then could affect things later on. And so sometimes I feel like sometimes I'm Scotty the coach, and then sometimes I'm Scotty the nutritionist, and then sometimes I'm Scotty the gear expert, and then sometimes I'm Scotty the counsellor or person to listen, and so yeah, you do wear various different hats along the journey. Obviously anything other than coaching is coming from my personal experience, because I'm not a qualified psychologist, I'm not a qualified nutritionist, but obviously having gained a lot of experience over the years through, you know, racing as an athlete and obviously through coaching as well. A lot of the process of training and preparing for events and what you're doing day to day, week in, week out in the grind, that obviously can help other areas of life and other things going on. And it's kind of one of those things, like if you expose yourself to hard things and challenges, the whole process of that happening and overcoming things, or having adversity and having to manage things, and, you know, being at a spot in a race where it's -3, the rain or hail's coming in sideways, and you've got to ask yourself the question, like, you know, how much do I want this? There are some of the kind of real kind of key moments that happen during a training cycle or in a race that, yeah, it is realizing that, you know, the connection between mind and body is so strong in a sport like trail and ultra running, and you kind of can't just have one or the other. You do need both together working pretty well simultaneously, because otherwise, and I've always said to people, like, you could be as fit and fast, as strong as you've ever been, ever, for a race, but if you're not in the right headspace going into a race, or if you get into the race and then, you know, something happens and you don't manage it well and the wheels fall off and the toys are getting thrown out of the cot, all of a sudden it doesn't matter how fit, fast and strong you are, because you don't have that kind of mental capacity to, you know, to manage things well and to, you know, to problem solve. It's kind of like, I feel like as a coach, I shouldn't expect athletes to do things that I'm not willing to do, or I can't expect to be, you know, harping on to athletes to include some foam rolling and body maintenance and mobility programs and strength and conditioning and eating well and all that kind of stuff if I'm not doing some of the same things. Or like, I don't want to be a coach who's saying like, hey, I think we need to be a bit more conservative with, you know, what we're doing when we're doing it. We want to, you know, gradually progress into this season, and then this season is one season and a series of seasons to come. So whenever I've been kind of planning out my own race calendar as an athlete, that definitely is a thought in my mind. It's like, well, like, I'm here giving advice and direction on what I think is best for the athletes that I coach. And the same principle applies to me. Like, I can't say to someone like, oh no, I don't think you should do 600k races in a year. I think it's a bit too much. And then all of a sudden I'm out there doing 600k races per year, or, you know, variations of. And so it just makes me feel, I guess, sort of accountable in a way with what I'm doing, with my own training and how I'm racing. The whole kind of like relationship between coach and athlete, a lot of it is just based on trust and belief of like, I am as an athlete doing the right things that I need to be doing, and I trust that you've got my back and you're going to be doing everything that you can possibly can to, you know, to help me as an athlete. And that's the same kind of relationship that I have with Robbie. It's probably a little bit different with Robbie because, yeah, we've been mates for probably close to 10, maybe 12 years now. So we were friends long before he started coaching me. To say to an athlete, like, you know, like, I know you really want to do this race, but it's just not in our best interest to do it, sort of thing. And so some of those kind of conversations and practices, I guess, kind of in a way make it easier for me to make hopefully smart decisions, you know, for myself as an athlete, because it's like, there's always going to be things to do. And then the worst thing that I could do would be, you know, jump into a race when I'm not quite ready for it. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm 50k into a 100k race. Instead of being able to be finished in 7k time, I'm not even, you know, I'm halfway there kind of thing. So some of those tough decisions are hard to make, but I definitely feel like some of the conversations and relationships I've had with my athletes help me, and then my coach Robbie make some of those decisions for me personally as an athlete as well.